So those are just some examples of the sorts of actions that we would like to see resulting as long-term impacts of these Project Go programs. That in the future, the kids who are coming to your programs, as they grow up, they're doing things like this to kind of demonstrate their commitment to conservation. So this is kind of a measurement tool in the future. So we got to take baby steps, though, to get to that, to get to that point. So we talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We got our own hierarchy of outdoor awareness for this whole concept of getting kids comfortable going outside. So it starts here at the bottom. There needs to be access to the outdoors. And once there's some access to the outdoors, the big step is to be able to overcome your fears to actually be able to open up that door and take that step outside. And so that's where a lot of these programs can really help address that issue of helping create safe, welcoming, engaging experiences so kids can kind of develop that comfort and overcome those fears. Once their fears have been somewhat alleviated, then they can start building that comfort level. We move up, they start developing outdoor skills, outdoor knowledge. And as they become engaged in the outdoors through those outdoor skills activities they're doing, that's where they start to develop awareness of what's going on in that outdoor environment around them. That evolves into appreciation for nature, and then at the tippity top, that's when we start to demonstrate stewardship. We want to take care of these places. So there's quite a process to get to the top, and it all starts with the kinds of activities that we can offer in these after-school settings. Here's just a few simple tips for engaging kids with nature. Questioning is a great technique. Asking questions to get them thinking about what we see around us. Positive attitude's a big deal on your part as the program leader. If you don't like mosquitoes or mud, or it's kind of hot and you feel sweaty and you don't like that, and you start complaining, that's going to follow through. All the kids are going to model that behavior. So sometimes you even have to fake it. Did any of you guys go to summer camp at all when you were younger? I always say, think of those camp counselors. If they're good camp counselors, usually they're always like, hey, and they just kind of keep you going. And that's kind of YMCA staff are usually like that anyways. Finding the positive aspects. So if a kid, is scared of something or not sure about something, trying to find positive aspects of that object, that creature, that plant or whatever, it almost distracts the attention, but then also gets them a little more excited about what they're looking at. So using that positive knowledge. Demonstrating enthusiasm, we just kind of talked about that with positive attitude, but enthusiasm is very contagious. We do this one thing as naturalists, one of our techniques. We get down there, look at that, really get into it. It's like really dramatic almost, and then everybody's like, what? It's cool, what is it? It's a turd from a rabbit, but I just got you excited about it, didn't I? So getting enthusiastic. And then once again, the safety, maintaining that sincere regard for safety. Kids know when you're just there because it's a job, or when you actually are sincere and you care. And so making sure that safety is the top priority and everybody feels comfortable and safe. And then also, too, wishing to learn more about the natural world yourself. So is there something that you've always wanted to know more about when it comes to the outdoors? Flowers, birds, a certain outdoor skill. But when you can draw in those interests that you have, that makes it more genuine, and usually is kind of contagious with the kids too. They can tell you're more passionate and excited about it. So that's what I like about this program. There's no curriculum that says you have to teach these things. Draw on your interests. And then once again, talking to the kids to find out what they might want to learn about. But you can really combine those two things so that everybody's excited about it. So what we're going to do is a few scenarios. So I'm just going to pass these out. Once again, we'll just work in our teams that we've been working with. So we'll give you maybe 5 minutes or so to look at your scenario and maybe come up with a way you would handle that scenario. And there's really no right or wrong. We'll just have a discussion about it. Usually we act these scenarios out, but I'm not going to make you do that today. So we're going to just go through these because these are numbered. We'll just go around, but I'm going to... Okay, scenario one, who had that one? Will you guys read it out loud first?
Some of the participants are not excited about this activity. They're complaining that they do not like walking and hikes are boring. What are some ways you can change their attitudes?
Yeah, you can turn part of that walk into a game, scavenger hunt, or the singing. I remember going to a camp out in Montana once, and we did a lot of singing on the trail. We were backpacking, and so that was kind of or they had name games and stuff they were doing. So yeah, so here's some other ideas. So distract their attention from the negative behavior by asking them questions about what they hope to see. Or maybe, yeah, you can come up with a list. What's 5 things we want to try to see on this walk? Yeah. Be creative, really. It's just think about when you were a kid, right? Simple things. And we just said that. Make the hike into a fun game, team building activity, whatever. Okay, scenario 2.
Go outdoors. So we were talking about like some sort of dip your toes in the water, like outdoors things like.
Just like you said, maybe hold off on that field trip until they get a little more used to the program. And then once again, just making sure you don't give in to that attitude, because you guys work with kids a lot. I'm thinking for people who maybe haven't. The kids are whiny, they're complaining, and that can bring you down, and you got to try to just stay positive and think of the end goal. Okay, scenario 3, nobody had that one, but I'm going to read it out loud and we can just brainstorm. While exploring the beach at a county park, one of the high school participants at your program sees a water snake and becomes terrified. His fear spreads among the other children, and soon many are scared to enter the water. How might you handle this situation?
What do you guys see over here? They say a snake. We would say, well, that snake is like a part of everything around us.
And then look, you don't have to know much about snakes, because that's the thing. Like what I might say is totally different than what another person would say, because I know a little bit more about snakes. But water snakes aren't going to hurt you. The only venomous snake in Minnesota is a rattlesnake, and only one person in the whole history of Minnesota has died from a rattlesnake bite. So I could pull out some cool facts, but we could look at some things, parts of that snake. If it stays long enough, usually that snake's going to be scared and crawl off as fast as it can. But trying to flip it around and look at some of the positive reasons. What would happen if we didn't have snakes? What do snakes eat? I mean, you can really flip it around where they start to go, wow, I didn't know that. But that, once again, I know a little bit about snakes, not everybody does. So keeping that positive attitude, if you go, holy crap, and you jump back all scared, that's going to be contagious. Which I got to say that I did do that before. I think it was with a wasp. I was like, no, Sarah, you got to be positive. Cool, wasp, get out of my face. Try to stay calm. And then, yeah, using that as a teaching moment, trying to point out some positive things, just like you were saying. So, nice job. Scenario 4, nobody had. Okay, so some of the elementary school age children at your program are talking about how they wish they were at home working on the next level of their video game. They're acting like they're too cool for the program, and they say their parents made them come. What would you do?
What if you could make the activity into a video game? Like if you see so many of these things, then you level up. And
you could try that though. That was actually at another training somebody mentioned that similar concept. So let's turn it into a video game kind of experience. Yeah, definitely. Any other ideas? Here's a couple things. And these are pretty generic. You guys are going to come up with better stuff when you have conversations. Okay, keep that upbeat attitude, pointing out the positive aspects. And those older kids, because that kind of mentioned it was maybe some of the older kids that were complaining. I guess it didn't. But the older kids often tend to be the ones that are kind of like, Lord, this is not, I'm too cool for this. How can you engage them as leaders or something? Let them be in charge of something. That usually flips their attitude right around. During a snowshoeing activity, one of the junior high school kids makes a racist comment to a younger Latino participant who is not properly dressed for the winter weather. How do you handle that? So having that conversation off to the side, away from the rest of the group. So there's a couple things here. So pulling them aside, the kid that's initiating that kind of racist talk, that needs to be addressed instantly. That shouldn't be tolerated at all. And that depending on what he said, could even be where the parents are followed up with as well at the end of that activity. Oh, hey, look at that. That was the next point on my thing. And then also having a conversation with the other child. Definitely you'd want to involve both of the kids in the conversation about the incident that took place, but as far as the winter clothing and not being prepared, that's a whole nother aspect of this, right? We want to have a safe, engaging experience outdoors, and if you're in shorts and flip-flops in the middle of winter, that's not going to happen. So having a conversation with the parents of that child and finding out if they don't have the appropriate clothing, how can we get that? How can we find that? So you'll see suggestions later, but a lot of times lost and found, there's so much stuff left behind at the end of the year. Schools are happy to give out to after school programs. That's how we got a lot of our stuff through Project Go. So we always had spare stuff for kids who weren't dressed appropriately. But even having a conversation with the parents can just help educate them, you know, for your child to be safe in the winter here, because maybe they come from another climate. Here's the types of clothing, and we can help you find it if you don't have it.
On a walk at a local bike trail, your preschool-age kids see some beautiful flowers in bloom near the trail's edge. What could you do to enhance this experience?
If they have a phone, which a lot of times these kids do, they can take a picture. You could, start them on a field guide. You can make their own field guide or something. Yeah, so there's a lot of ways you can spin that around. So that's where I use that naturalist crawl and get right down there on my hands and knees. Oh, cool, look at that flower. And yeah, like you said, pointing out some of those different positive connections in nature there. And even if I didn't know what it is, which this happens to me more often than you would think in the field, because people think, oh, you're a naturalist, you know everything. I know like this much out of what's out there. So I can make my owl calls, but these other calls, no. So a lot of times like, I don't know, but man, that's amazing. What do you think? What do you think? We could look this up. We could look into this some more. But letting them kind of come up with a theory or a philosophy on it. So in doing this, engaging kids in the outdoors, I've already said this a couple times, it doesn't require any special skill. It doesn't require any special equipment. When you think back to when you were kids, now getting chased by a dog, maybe, I keep bringing that one up, but you know, a lot of what we do that is clinging in our memories for favorite outdoor experiences were really either free or super low cost activities. And I mean, you were camping, but it was probably more the bonding with your family outdoors that is what keeps that, you know, strong in your mind. And the treat at Dairy Queen. So, you know, I don't mean to rip on REI, because for a lot of people, that's where they go get their equipment, Gander Mountain, places like that. But we're kind of brainwashed that you have to have gear and equipment to get outside, and it's not the case. So we really stress for you guys to be resourceful, be creative, use what's around you. And I already said that. Yeah, so this is just recapping what I just said. Think about when you were a kid, those simple things that you could do in the backyard, even if mom and dad were not there. Simple things. I mean, that picture, look at what they're doing. They're rolling down a hill in the grass. Well, does it look like we just knocked them all over? Yeah, they're rolling down a hill. And they did that for like over an hour. And I remember doing that as a kid. And you get kind of dizzy, and then you go up the hill and do it again. And so sometimes just laying on your back and watching the clouds, something you don't even think about, but if you've never done that before, it's pretty cool. So there's a lot of different things that you can do where you don't have to have any supplies. We're going to do a little brainstorming activity. So what we're going to do is have each team grab a backpack, and then each team is going to pull a card out of here. These cards have ages of kids, time of year, and what supplies you need to pull out of the backpack. And we're going to have you just take about 10 minutes to brainstorm an activity that you could create using what you've been assigned.
All right, so our season was winter. We had 4th through 6th graders, and then our items in the backpack is a journal, the bug house, and then a field guide. So we decided that it'd be a fun activity to go on a scavenger hunt. And we decided that using the field guide, we would have them identify certain things. So since it's the winter, probably like some pine tree type things, and depending on snow cover, maybe some rocks.
Alright, so our season is fall. We are grades K through 3. We have a ruler, a paint swatch, or many paint swatches, and bubbles. Alright, so the first aspect of our little scavenger hunt is we're going to use the bubbles to kind of guide our scavenger hunt. We're going to blow the bubbles, and we're going to see what the bubbles hit.
Mm-hmm. And then they go in teams to wherever those bubbles are, and then kind of record observances, maybe in that field notebook about.
I think what's cool too when you really start looking at these activities, I mean, you've got math, language if they're writing, I mean, science, all kinds of stuff involved in that.
We had winter grades K through 3, and we had a rope, binoculars, and a whistle. So we thought of doing some sort of like scavenger hunt as well. So since it's winter time, we don't know how much would be covered with snow and whatnot, but just go around using the binoculars, trying to find like as many different types of leaves and plants that maybe just out in the open or something.
Nice work, you guys. Thank you, everybody. The first thing for us, as you know, program leaders is to really acknowledge that nature is everywhere. Anywhere you go on this planet, there's nature around you. So if you don't have access to a yard or garden, you have opportunities to take walks. So yeah, if you're able to take a walk, and that could just be around the block. It doesn't have to be half a mile or a mile away. But walking around the neighborhood a little bit, there's a lot you can find. Is there a park within walking distance? That's not practical for a lot of sites, but if there is, can you walk to that? Container gardens, things you can do right on site. You could literally, at this site, this Y here, you could have some little container gardens out front. You could actually have a bird feeder or two out front, and you're going to see butterflies and you're going to see birds coming to those. So that's one thing, we do these pollinator butterfly programs at the park, and it's like, I love butterflies because no matter where you live in Minnesota, if you live in an apartment and you can actually put a little pot out on your step or your little patio, you're going to get butterflies, which is pretty awesome. That will come to you wherever you are. How can you bring nature into your site? What are some things you can do to bring it inside? So here's a few ideas. This is actually a picture from an in-home daycare where they actually painted one of the rooms as an outdoor camping scene and set it up with a sleeping bag and a fake grill and fake food, and kind of cool. But kid-friendly greenery, so plants. There's actually research when we're talking about like green and trees and things like that, of just having a plant on your desk, how beneficial that can be. So there's kid-friendly, edible plants that you can put in your site that if somebody takes a bite of the leaf, they're not going to die. Like we mentioned, container gardens, and some people do herb gardens inside, so you could bring those in. Just the way you decorate, like we see here, and like I talked about that clinic out in California that's doing the pictures of parks and the paintings on the walls. You can bring decor, and they even make carpet that looks like streams and things like that. So a lot of different ways that with the decorating you can make it more nature friendly inside. We mentioned a bird feeder window, a nature library area. So I know some after school programs will have like a science center and a dress up center and an art center, different corners of the room. But what about a specifically hands-on nature center with some library nature books? And that kind of repeats itself. And then also what's kind of neat, like on YouTube, there's all these soundscapes you can listen to. And I guess people who have trouble sleeping, you know how some people listen to the white noise? They actually have like crickets chirping for like 12 hours straight that you can listen to if you need that to be able to fall asleep, or frogs, or the stream sounds, or the forest with the birds. So there's nature sounds that you could play, even let's say it's like snack time, homework time at your after school setting. So just kind of thinking of other ways to expose kids to nature and the idea of nature. A lot of sites are looking at these nature play areas. So I kind of mentioned that before with the Nature Explorer program. But they don't have to be these big, intricate things that we see at some sites. It could be really simple stuff. So these are just a few examples here. In your backpack, there's a booklet, Parents Guide to Nature Play, and actually the Jeffers Foundation provides those for us to put in those backpacks. So Galen is actually involved with the Jeffers Foundation. They're a great organization based out of Minnesota here, and they have a ton of really neat resources for connecting kids to the outdoors. So that booklet is in your bag. It's got all kinds of ideas for creating nature play spaces and just making your yard more kind of nature friendly for kids. So these are just some examples of what other sites have done. If you go onto Pinterest or just Google nature play areas, you'll see thousands and thousands of photos. Cool stuff. And yeah, I don't know how many of you guys are working with high school age. It's usually a little bit younger. So it's a little bit easier, like for me, for Project Go, it was like 2nd through 5th grade seemed to be kind of ideal. Once they got into sports and stuff, it got a little trickier. But you can definitely do outdoor activities with older kids. It just gets to be a little trickier. Of course, you're not going to be probably built, yeah, you could, if you call it the right thing. Basic survival shelter building versus fort building, you could get high school kids probably pretty excited about it. When they surveyed kids, they found some things that they really like to see in their outdoor environment. So water, remember back, did any of you ever make mud pies? Like that's a big attraction. I think all kids are kind of attracted to the mud. So water, places that have vegetation, trees, bushes, flowers, long grasses, especially a vegetation they can hide in and kind of make those little secret places. If you can have animals, tadpoles, frogs, things like that, that's even better. Sand, especially if they can mix it with water. And things that have that natural color diversity, they change throughout the seasons. Places, like we said, where they can kind of hide and get out of the sun and the wind, but they can also kind of have a little private space there. So those nooks and crannies where they can create their little secret forts. And once again, they call this loose parts play, this last one, but where they can move stuff around and construct, and then it just kind of gets thrown back for the next person to play with. These are for little guys, but there's a lot of things you can do with babies and toddlers too. People kind of don't think about that, and child is never too young to get outside. So we'll just kind of buzz through those because you're working with bigger kids. But Pinterest, a lot of these ideas are from Pinterest, what I'm showing right now. So if you go on Pinterest, there's some cool stuff. So one thing here, sending a welcome letter home at the beginning of the year to the families, and kind of explaining the outdoor activities you're going to be doing, why it's important, and kind of preparing them, what they can do. We always had, well, we learned this the hard way, but some kids, you know, they have their one really good pair of tennis shoes that they wear for school, and if those get muddy, it's a big deal. So making sure the parents know ahead of time, we might be getting dirty. If there's a spare pair of shoes that are kind of a junky shoe that we can have on the day that we're going to be going outside, they can keep in a locker or keep at the Y or whatever the site is. But that was kind of a trial by error learning, because some parents got angry when their kids got dirty until we actually talked about how it is very beneficial when they're outside playing and they get dirty. So of course we don't want them staining their clothes, but they're learning when they're doing that. And we mentioned that lost and found, man, at the end of the year you can really get a lot of nice stuff to keep on hand for kids who maybe aren't quite prepared. And then we had one school where the principal chewed us out after because there was a little bit of dirt left on the floor. And we were like, whoa, show us where the broom and stuff is and we'll clean it up. But we really had to kind of educate that principal on why this was a good program and what the kids were getting out of it. But it's like, wow. So other resources on your flash drive, and also in your backpack, there's a Project Get Outdoors activity calendar. It's not a dated calendar. It's one you can use year after year after year. And you flip to whatever month you're on, and you can pick the day. And there's every day of the year, there's an idea, a seasonal outdoor idea. So tons of ideas on the calendar. We've got the Parents Guide to Nature Play I mentioned is in there too, with lots of cool ideas. On the flash drive, I Can Teach in the Outdoors. This booklet here is a resource that Upham Woods is a 4-H camp in Wisconsin, and they still use this to train their staff, and it's got some really nice ideas in that little booklet. It's like a 10-page little packet. The Children in Nature Network, we've mentioned that website a few times now. They have all kinds of tools on there too. They have a natural teachers network within that, and you can go on there and download all kinds of tools. The National Wildlife Federation, this is a resource there that they've created. I swear every organization that does anything with conservation has tried to create tools to get kids outdoors. And then Boy Scouts has some really nice training and resources that you don't necessarily have to be a scout leader to access. So look into that. I think Girl Scouts probably do too. We have a Pinterest page through Project Go, but you can just go on Pinterest and search whatever title, put in nature play ideas, and tons of stuff comes up. University of Minnesota Master Naturalist course. I actually have in this chapter, there's a brochure at the end of chapter 5 there, a little more on that course. But if you're really interested in learning more about nature, that's like I said, a 40-hour course you can take. It's offered all across the state. And what's really nice about that course is the networking that happens, and you really end up getting connected with different conservation agencies and organizations. So sometimes it's even led, people have gotten jobs after taking that course because they made connections. But it's just a nice program for learning a bit more about how to teach about the ecology and natural history of Minnesota. So if you're not taking any college courses on that, that's something you could take down the road. And then I mentioned Upham Woods Outdoor Learning Center in Wisconsin. They offer all kinds of trainings and stuff on teaching people how to teach people about the outdoors. So that's over in Wisconsin if you're interested in looking that up.